Hello Internet, and welcome to a new tutorial. So you know how digital synthesizers can be sometimes really digital, really bright, lifeless, not that warm enough. As once my girlfriend told me, too plastic, like she was passing by behind me and she was like, Ollie, that sound is too plastic. No, and at the same time, I've been reading a lot of comments online about how early digital synthesizers from the 90s were warm and had like a mojo to them and some grit, and how digital synthesizers now, they lack that mojo, like that warmth, they're like too digital. Well, first up, I think it's ridiculous because, as far as I know, these early digital synthesizers were accused of being too digital, too bright, lifeless. But yeah, that's my own opinion. And that got me thinking, how can I actually breathe life into my digital sound, into my ultra plastic sound? How can I give them a little bit of mojo, and get them some warmth? And actually I found the answer of that in this little plugin that we have in here called the TAL DAC. And this tutorial is going to be all about how I use this little plugin to breathe life actually into my digital sounds. But before we dive into this tutorial, if you'd like to support the channel, you can consider becoming one of my patrons, buy my presets on Gumroad, or leave a like, comment, subscribe. Stuff like that helps the channel a lot. Content like this is posted every week and special content for my Patreons. Now, with that said, let's dive into this tutorial. So here we are in Bitwig, and here's the TAL DAC, and what it does basically, it's going to emulate the recording of a sample through a reduced bitrate and like lower sample rate, and then it'll upsample it and play it back. So basically it's like record a sample, downsampling it, and then it's going to play it back while upsampling it. And during this process of downsampling and upsampling, here's where the mojo or the warmth or, the sparkle or whatever you want to call it will be added to this sound. Okay, so if you look at the plugin, you can see these two stages clearly. And what's really nice is that we have overall control of all of the aspects of these recording and playback. So we can add just the right amount of mojo. So the recording stage, we have a main input volume. With it, we can clip it. We can clip the sound. And this is really nice when used with drum sounds. I'll show you in a bit. Here's the overall recording sample rate. Here's the quality of the converter. And with it, we can introduce aliasing. This is really nice when used with synthesizers. And here we have the bit scale. Basically, what it does, it'll scale the volume of the sample. So it'll emulate recording on lower volumes, and it'll basically add like low resolution to the sound without actually losing the dynamics of the sound. And then we have the mu-loss switch in here. Basically, it'll emulate the recording through a 12-bit converter. I think the chip called AM6070 or something like that. I'm not geek enough, but you can check that out in the manual. Actually, everything I'm saying is right in the manual. And then we have the delta decoding in here. And you can think of it as some sort of a low-pass filter. Like, I'm not geek enough to get into it, but yeah, just think of it as some sort of a low-pass filter going on. I'll show you how it sounds in a bit. And here we have the oversampling. And then we have the reconstruction stage in here. We have 4 different reconstruction algorithms. The Sync 8 in here is the one emulating how the Akai S1000 used to work. And actually, I think it's the one that has the most warmth to it, or like the warmest, but maybe that's just my brain tricking me that it's really warm because in the manual, let's say it's emulating an Akai S1000. I don't know. I'll leave that to you. And then we have filter 1, filter 2. There are 2 filters in serial, and their job is to reduce the harsh higher frequencies if we don't want them to be. To be honest, I never really used them. Then we have jitter in here. It'll basically introduce noise, and we can set it to stereo. And then we have a high shelf and a low shelf in here. Then we have drive and output volume and a dry and wet knob. Now, before we hear it in action, let's see what it's doing. And I couldn't think of a better way to demonstrate how it's working than by actually using one of the synthesizers that has been criticized, at least over the internet, of losing its mojo when it moved to audio over USB. And I'm actually talking about the Virus TI. Because, as I said, it has been criticized that it lost the Virus soul when it moved to audio over USB. I think that's ridiculous, but let's see what it's doing. And as the usual, I'll leave you to test out and judge by yourself. So let's start with a sine wave. And this is as pure as a sine wave can be. Okay, now let's reduce the bits and see what's going on. Okay, pretty nice. Now let's set the virus to a saw wave and see what it's doing on a saw wave, to a saw wave. Let's turn on the mu law in here. See, okay, here's the dry signal. And as I introduce the DAC, you can see that there's aliasing going on already, you know, because on the oscilloscope, when the sound is like wiggling a little bit, this means that there's some aliasing going on. This is how the oscilloscope tells us that there's some aliasing. See how the bias is some sort of a low pass filter. I don't know what you think, but the sync gate is kind of warm. Okay, pretty nice. Now we've seen what it's doing to a raw signal. Now let's hear what it's going to do to one of my presets. So the preset sounds just like this. Okay, let's turn it off. Okay, I'm going to set the TAL DAC to default again. And what I'm going to do, okay, let's make it a little bit bigger. And what I'm going to do is, first off, I'll introduce the mu law, and then I'll play and I'll set the mode to syncate, and then I'll play a little bit with the parameters and see how it'll affect the sound. So let's do this. I don't know if you can hear it. There's a little bit, or like a tiny bit of crunchiness to the high end. Like, I really suggest you put some headphones, and I hope that YouTube's conversion didn't take it out, but like there's a tiny bit of crunchiness to the high end, and I really like that. Now I'm really going hardcore with the settings, and it's just for the sake of the example, you know. Okay, now let's hear it on another example from the virus. I'm going to initialize the patch and just set it to dry. And what I'm going to do, I'll just take one oscillator in here, so it'll be the second one. And what I'm going to do, I'll close it and I'll give the filter some resonance. Just like so. And now what I'll do, I'll just set the second LFO to modulate the filter a little bit. Okay, pretty nice. Now let's introduce the TAL DAC and see how it's affecting the sound. Hear that crunchiness? It's adding to the sound. Yeah, this is the mojo I'm talking about. See how it added like just a tiny bit of crunchiness to the high end, like, and just a little bit of warmth. Like, I'm not even sure about the warmth, you know, like it's so subtle, you know, and I think that probably my brain is triggering me because the Sync 8 algorithm, you know, emulates the Akai S1000. But I think in some cases it can make some difference to the sound. But now let's hear how it sounds on the drums. So here I have a drum sequence going on. All the drums that we're hearing are actually digital drums. Basically, they are modules from Bitwig. So sounds like this. Really nothing too special, okay? Now let's take a TAL DAC and see what we can do with it. So again, I'll set it to mu law, and then I'll clip it a little bit, play with the algorithms, and, you know, a little bit with these parameters and see what we can get. So see how the plugin shines on drums? I think this is awesome. I mean, before, after. Like, it even have like some sort of a gluing effect to it, like using a compressor, you know, on the sound. And I think on drums, it's really awesome, and like it really makes a difference, like even more than using it on synthesizers, you know. And yeah, with this is the end of this tutorial. I really hope you've liked it. I really hope you've learned something new, and yeah, see you next time. Have a great one.